Hey everybody, we're about to start in just a moment now. Just give me a second while a script runs in the background and then we'll get started. How are you lovely people doing today? Managed to get my Discord script to work properly. Found out that I wasn't waiting enough time in between each of my posts, so got about a minute or so on it. So yeah, shout out to KOE though. KOE did my first reaction video of the channel, so that's cool, talking about guns and gun control and the like, and he had some good things to say, some things I don't agree with. We're not going to get into it today because I haven't finished the video yet, so I've got about 30 minutes left on it because it was posted today while I was at work, but we'll do a reaction to it. Talk about some of the things we found that we didn't like about the video and some things that we did. But welcome one and all to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I am your host and moderator, Cypher here, and if this is your first time joining the News Roundup, welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad for you to join us. We do a weekly news roundup every Thursday at roughly about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, covering the news that was with a kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. So if this is something that you're interested in or would like to help out with, go ahead and reach out to us. You can find us on Discord and of course Twitter. So if you have something that you find interesting in the news, you want to hear my opinion on or producer's opinion on or what have you, go ahead and reach out to us on Twitter. We also do another 2 podcasts on this channel. First up is Cypher State, which we will be starting again this month in earnest, where we take people from political left and political right and talk about some sort of issue that is facing the geopolitical stage. Previous episodes have included the German elections, Tigray and the civil war happening in Ethiopia, and the like. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, we do that at least once a month, and that starts up back in earnest this month. We also do another podcast called Praxis Run, and the goal of Praxis Run is to introduce people to people of different political stripes and how they put their theory into action, otherwise known as praxis. And the reason that we're doing this is because we want to tap down on some of the vitriol that we see in our today's political discourse. And one of the ways we believe that we can do this is by introducing people to other people's ideas. Now, we won't have, racist activists on the program and the like, but you will see people on the program for school reform or anti-school choice or what have you. And our next guest is actually going to be Kay Fellows, who is a pro-life activist from the left. And that episode will be live on Twitch and YouTube this coming Tuesday, the 7th, I want to say, yeah. Tuesday, June 7th, and that will happen at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Kay Fellows will be joining us for that, and we're going to do an interview with her and try to learn more about what she does, how she goes about it, what she's accomplished, etc. So it should be a good time. So if you have somebody that you know that is an activist or an activist yourself and would like to be interviewed to tell people how you go about putting, again, your theory into action, go ahead again and reach out to us on Twitch or Discord or Facebook, and we will work with you to get that interview happening. So without further ado, though, let's go ahead and start the show. All right, so our coverage tonight begins with news from Russia's war in Ukraine. And up first, we're seeing a new pledge of new weapons coming from the United States for Ukraine. Well, let's talk about that. The US said Tuesday that it will send Ukraine a small number of high-tech, medium-range rocket systems. This is a critical weapon that Ukrainian leaders have been begging for as they struggle to stall Russian progress in the Donbas region. The Associated Press reports that America is looking to strike a balance between helping Ukraine battle ferocious Russian artillery barrages while not providing arms that could allow Ukraine to hit targets deep inside Russia and trigger an escalation in the war. The weaponry is medium-range rockets. They generally can travel about 45 miles or 70 kilometers. The expectation is that Ukraine could use the rockets in the eastern Donbas region, where they could both intercept Russian artillery and take out Russian positions in towns where fighting is intense. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said yesterday that the weapons were staged in Eastern Europe some weeks ago so that delivery could be swift if the need arose. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz this week said that his country will supply Ukraine with modern anti-aircraft missiles and radar systems. This stepping up of arms deliveries comes amid criticism that Germany isn't doing enough to help Kyiv. Now, in additional news, 2 regional offices in Russia were branded traitors in order to leave a legislative meeting. The order came after the officials called on Vladimir Putin to end the invasion of Ukraine. Both are part of Russia's Communist Party. Video of the meeting, which is no longer available, showed one of the men telling Putin that the operation is failing and costing many Russian lives. The second later speaks in his support. According to a Business Insider translation, he said, quote, "If our country does not stop the military operation, the number of orphans in our country will increase." Over the course of the military operation, young people lose their lives or become disabled. Those young people could have been very useful to our country. Hey, Phoenix, Ivy, when we'll have Nate Dallin back on? Whenever you want, buddy. Let me know when you have some free time. We can talk again. Continuing on, the continuation of the military operations will lead to the increased numbers of dead and wounded military personnel. We demand the immediate withdrawal of the Russian troops from Ukraine. In other news of dissension in the Russian ranks, President Putin has fired 5 generals and 1 police colonel, according to a report from Moscow-based media group RBC. Putin reportedly issued a decree on Monday that saw 5 generals at the Russian Ministry of the Internal Affairs dismissed from their post in what one unnamed official said was part of a personnel rotation. The reported firings come as Russian forces continue to fail to achieve their military goals in Ukraine. The death toll for Russia's highest-ranking military officials continues to climb. A deputy commander of a Russian Special Forces regiment was killed in the Donbas region of Ukraine on Tuesday, according to Baza Telegram channel. Thanks, KOE. Appreciate it. And I'm going to finish your video after I watch this so I can prep to talk about it. So, as I said, this death is the largest among Russia's high-ranking military commanders who have been forced onto the front lines due to what is widely seen as poor organization. Despite fighting for more than 3 months, Russia has failed to capture the capital of Kyiv, and at least 49 Russian colonels have died in battle, the Daily Mail reported. No official tally has been released by Russia or Ukraine, though. And continuing ongoing battles in the east has been happening. So Russia is concentrating most of its military power on trying to capture all of the eastern Ukraine's Donbas region. This is the region of Ukraine that is closest to Russia, and they want to, strategically speaking, it seems that Russia wants to connect a land bridge from Russia to Crimea, which is where that naval base is. So if they can capture this territory and hold on to it, it's going to have an easier time for them to make it to the naval base and conduct operations there within the Black Sea. Now, so a regional governor in southern Ukraine says Russian troops are retreating and blowing up bridges to obstruct a possible Ukrainian advance. And in eastern Ukraine, a regional governor says Russian forces control about 70% of Severodonetsk, a city that has become the focus of Moscow's offensive. The governor of Luhansk region said in Telegram post on Wednesday that some Ukrainian troops were fighting with the Russians in the city while others had pulled back. Quote, "The evacuation of civilians has been halted. There's no possibility to bring in humanitarian aid," he said. He said the only other city in the Luhansk region has not taken by Russia or Moscow-backed separatists is fully under Ukrainian control. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly address Tuesday that Ukrainian fighters had seen, quote, "some success in the Kherson direction." Now, additional reports are indicating that Denmark has changed stances on EU common defense policy. So according to reports, yesterday, Denmark voted to overturn its opt-out of the EU's common defense policy. The historic vote reversed 3 decades of Euroscepticism regarding security matters. The move is the latest sign of the West coalescing in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Danish officials can now participate in EU defense discussions, and the country's armed forces can deploy on EU military operations. Quote, "We now have an even stronger foundation for close Nordic security cooperation in EU and NATO," tweeted the Danish foreign minister in response to the result. So that concludes our weekly update on Ukraine. And so we're going to now get into some US politics, starting first with the Biden administration's dealing with student loans. Now, a lot of people have complained that Biden hasn't done enough, or he should just do the whole 50,000 without acknowledging what Biden has done on the student loan front. And there has been a lot. So that's what this segment is going to cover. So there's a lot of rhetoric about the promises President Biden made on the campaign trail about forgiving student loan debt. That rhetoric is mostly of, quote, "Biden hasn't done enough." So we're going to kick off our US politics segment with a focus on dispelling this notion. Since Biden took office, he's taken a number of actions to address the $1.7 trillion student debt crisis that's carried by 45 million Americans. roughly 1/3 of all adults. Let's start with some background and facts. As most people know, millions of Americans rely on the federal government to subsidize and loan out money to cover the cost of college. Education loans have existed for generations, but borrowing only really took off in the past 2 decades. And this takeoff is in direct response to policy taken since the 1980s, with the federal government removing a lot of its direct support for college education, either in terms of raw dollar amounts where it was actually reduced in the 1980s, or not growing with the demand and inflation, and therefore in real nominal terms shrinking as a percentage of GDP. And of course, this is due to a number of different reasons: the Reagan consensus, the idea that education is only a personal good and not a public good, among others. And so what has that led to? Well, that led to the federal government saying, well, we still want people to go to college, but we want them to pay for it. We know that they can't, not everybody can pay for it, so we're going to make it to where they can get loans. And that's where this loan crisis comes from. And that's why we saw this explosion of student debt in the last 20 years. And it's also gone up since 2008, since state governments have cut their own education budgets when it comes to higher education. Now, the federal lending system, which originates the vast majority of student loans, is complex. There are many moving parts and many people whose lives it has touched. Public awareness of education debt is high amid debates over loan forgiveness. Public awareness of education, or critics of the, sorry. Let me restate that. So public awareness of education debt is high amid debates over loan forgiveness. That said, critics of broad cancellation through presidential executive order say the policy would disproportionately benefit elites, while proponents say the student loan burden is far more nuanced. So to get a clearer picture of that, let's go over to some of the charts that we have found that put this into stark contrast. I'll make sure that came up on the screen. All right, so you can all see this, right? So as you can see on the screen here is that most student debt is held in large loans, but most borrowers have small loans. About 13% of federal student debt is held in loans of less than 20K. And an additional 17% is held by borrowers with less than 40K or 40K or less, which means that total, thanks 10Flicks for the subscription. Appreciate it, buddy. That's really great. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we're getting a lot of viewers today. Thanks everybody for joining in. We're talking about right now student debt. So as I was saying though, we have roughly 30% of all borrowers have less than 40K or 40K or less in student debt, with another 32% having 40 to 100K in student debt, with it being heavily weighted on the lower end of that spectrum. We're talking less than $60,000. So that means out of all student debt, the vast majority of it is by people that have gone to college, not grad school, and have debt from that. Now, as you can see here, 53% of borrowers actually owe less than 20K. So some of that stuff I said was a little bit wrong, but as you can see on this bottom of this chart, we can scroll down a little bit, zoom in, scroll down, zoom in, scroll down. There we go. And then I will turn off my camera for a second. Boom. So as you can see here, boom, right here, this giant fucking bubble here, 50, less than $20,000. Isn't that ridiculous? Did anybody that's watching this know that the vast majority of loans, vast majority of borrowers have minuscule debt, but that debt burden is very high? Who knows? So there's other charts that we have to look at here as well. So another chart that we need to look at is the percent of Americans in each age group that owe money. Now, let me get over here so I can see it a little bit better. Scroll in. So you can see that 24% of student borrowers are between the ages of 18 and 24. That makes sense. That's when people go to college. They go to college between the ages of 18 and 24. So having roughly a fifth or a fourth of all student borrowers rather being of that age demographic makes a lot of sense. And then having an additional 33% of loan borrowers being between the ages of 25 and 34, which means these are the age group of people that hold debt, not the people that are borrowing in each group. So that means that this is the percentage of people that fall into these age groups. Also makes a ton of sense, because people between the ages of 25 and 34 have just started, either graduated a year or two ago or have just graduated and are now just starting their lives and getting into corporate America or teaching or what have you, whatever requires a degree. They have just started working those jobs. And so they have not actually gone through and started making those payments yet. And in this age demographic group, we see people that are going to grad school and getting their masters or their doctorates. And that is where this pink and red numbers come from. The people with 40 to 100K and the people with 100K plus, making up not a really large percentage of the population, but you see those entering that age demographic, which again makes sense. All this makes sense, right? What might surprise people is the number of people who are 62 years or older that still have debt. Student debt, since the student loan borrowing program came into existence, was designed to be paid off within 15 to 30 years. That means that these people, that are at ages of, we'll say 50 to 62, so a full 16% of all student borrowers, are the people that are not able to pay off their debt quickly for whatever reason. And of those groups, a not insignificant portion of them have debt less than 10K. So when people say that the student loan repayment program, the payment programs for forgiving the debt would disproportionately help people that have 100K plus of student loans, when you're looking at this in just in terms of wrong numbers, I don't think that's correct. I would have to do some more advanced math than just like, back of the envelope stuff here and what we're looking at here though. But it doesn't appear to me that that would be actually the right response, because so few people have debt at those levels. So that's what we're seeing here. And then for our final chart is the average breakdown of student debt by state. And some of this is going to make a ton of sense given where the vast majority, or where the higher averages are. So we have Maryland and DC with the highest average of debt. Makes total sense. The DC metro area employs a lot of people in government and in higher, in not only in just government, but in higher education required government jobs and all the support networks that go into that. So Maryland and DC having the highest makes a ton of sense. We're talking lawyers, doctors, grad students, economists, etc. People that are think tanks that work for the government inside data, inside the USDA or the FDA or the Weather Service, what have you. All government agencies, not all of them, but a not insignificant portion of government agencies deal with a lot of data and actually have economists on hand or statisticians on hand. And those jobs require master's degrees in economics or math, and processing that data takes that. And then, of course, you have the lawyers and the lobbyists, etc., that usually have law degrees. So this makes a ton of sense, right? One of the things that I was surprised about with this map is actually Georgia. I was surprised that Georgia has such a high average of student loan debt. So this is at $42,000, right? I don't know why that is the case. If I had to guess, it could be because of the fact that just disproportionately African Americans, Black people, have more student debt or have student debt for longer than white people. And that's for a number of different reasons, things that make total sense. Wealth disparities due to previous racism, that sort of thing, right? And Georgia has a large population of black people. But that wouldn't explain all of it, right? I don't think that would explain all of it. So I would be very curious to figure out why that number is so high. Could it be that the South in general, this bit of the South, just in general has a higher concentration of poor people that have come from poorer families? That could explain more of it too. And if I had to guess, I would say that's probably the other side of the equation, the other piece of the equation that we are missing out just looking at these raw numbers. And then the rest of the country seems to be, middle, just around 34,000 or so. With New York, Illinois, California, and Hawaii being like kind of exceptions. Like this vast majority of states are like in this range here. So, under 35,000. So if Biden were to broadly forgive 50K of debt, which is what people like Elizabeth Warren and a lot of progressives, but not leftists, because leftists want everything forgiven. If he were to do that, that would pretty much wipe out most of the debt for most people, as we saw in this chart. Be wiping out for like, hell, what, 50, 70% of borrowers wiped out. So yeah, I don't, and we're talking teachers, we're talking teachers, social workers, entry level positions into tech, etc. That would wipe out most of their debt, or all of it, actually all of it. And police officers too, because some police departments do require people to have a college education in order to move up the ranks or even get hired in the first place due to its competitive nature and the proliferation of criminal justice degrees. So might not be a bad thing. It might not actually be regressive like people are thinking. But let's continue on though with some additional context here. So we've gone over how much people owe, what people owe based on age demographics, where those people live. But we haven't talked about what Biden has done so far with the executive pin and what that means for a lot of borrowers in dire straits. And it's going to take a minute to tell you all what has happened, because there's actually been a lot of incremental forgiveness on loans that have gone on over the last few months. So first up, Biden had extended the pause on student loan payments with 0% interest on his first day in office. The program was set to expire last month, but on April 5th, Biden extended the student loan program pause an additional 4 months through August 31st. The 0% interest rate accruing on that is a huge deal. It means that the people that aren't making payments, and a lot of people aren't. I'm going to look it up really quick. I want to say that I think it's 70% of loan borrowers haven't made a payment. Student loans. I think it's 70%. Yep, 72% of federal student loan holders report not being financially ready to resume payments if the moratorium expires as scheduled. And then as of February 26, 44% of all student borrowers hadn't made a payment since the pause had gone into effect. So this has been a de facto stimulus. And not only is it a de facto stimulus, but because the fact that there hasn't been interest accruing on it, there, in real terms, due to inflation, what have you, their amount of money that they owe has actually gone down. So there's that. So that's huge, right? And that's why but this is also why some people are saying that Biden could just do it forever, because it hasn't stopped him nobody's tried to stop him from doing it yet. Maybe not. I see I just dropped everybody. So what else has he done? Well, he's expanded the scope of student loan payment pause by including private loans under the federal family education loan program. So this program ended in 2010, But according to the Education Department's data, 11.2 million borrowers still have outstanding FFEL loans, totaling over $248 billion. The department acquired some of these outstanding loans. That means they bought it from private servicers, but many are still privately owned. So prior to this action by the Biden administration, the privately owned loans weren't affected by the earlier pause on federal owed student loan payments. So by including this, more people got covered. So under the expanded scope, any FFEL borrower who made a payment in the past year will have the option to request a refund, which means that they will be able to get some of that money back. Now, Biden has also asked the Education Department to review its authority on student loan debt. So in April, Biden asked Secretary of Education Miguel Cardin to create a memo on the president's legal authority to forgive up to $50,000 in student loan debts per person. Biden will, quote, look at that legal authority, Juan Carlin said. He'll look at the policy issues around it and he'll make a decision. He hasn't made a decision on that either way. And in fact, he hasn't yet gotten the memos that he needs to start to focus on that decision. President Biden has reversed a DeVos methodology for determining loan forgiveness. So on March 18th, Cardano reversed a Trump-era policy that gave only partial relief to defrauded students. This is the notion like, well, you still borrowed the money, you have to pay it back, right? Even though that they lied to you, even though that you were scammed, even though that you were defrauded, that's not our problem. You borrowed money, you have to pay it back. So the debt cancellation methodology, known as the borrower defense to repayment, approved by Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, compared the median earnings of graduates with debt relief claims to the median earnings of graduates in comparable programs. But compared to 99.2% approval rate for defrauded claims filed under President Barack Obama, DeVos had a 99.4% denial rate, which essentially means that there was no forgiveness under his program. And it ran up a huge backlog of claims from eligible defrauded borrowers seeking student debt forgiveness. The administration said that the process didn't result in appropriate relief determination and needed to be reversed. A judge recently ruled that DeVos must testify over why so few borrowers were approved for loan forgiveness. Again, the reason that they were prevented from this is because you took out the debt, you have to pay it. That's the simple explanation. It makes intuitive sense, but it doesn't include any of the circumstances that surround the debt borrowing in the first place. And it doesn't include the fraud that we have proved in court happened to over like millions of students when it comes to the private for-profit education sector. And that is what Biden also did. He's canceled over $7 billion in student debt for some defrauded borrowers by for-profit colleges. Now, for-profit institutions that shut down years ago, such as Corinthian College and ITT Technical Institute, remember those? Go to ITT Tech and become a electrical engineer, but work on cars or learn how to code. Bullshit. Like, these things were so outrageously expensive, and they were slow to actually adapt to the changing work environment. These were diploma mills. They got people jobs on contract for 6 or 7 months so that they wouldn't have to follow their own, you don't have to pay us anything if you can't find a job kind of thing, which is the sweetener in the deal. Like, why would we give you this money and tell you to come join us if we couldn't find you a job? Every one of our students gets a job within 6 months of graduating. But they don't tell you that after the 6-month contract where they got either the company that hired you got a government grant to hire recent graduates, or they made a deal with the school to place recent grads and gave them some money so that they could do it as like kind of a contracting thing. They don't tell you any of that, right? So that's what happened here. So in the quote though, quote, borrowers deserve a simplified and fair path to relief when they've been harmed by institutions' misconduct, Secretary Cardano said in a statement. A close review of these claims and associated evidence showed these borrowers have been harmed, and we will grant them a fresh start from their debt. This was the first time since 2017 that borrower defense claims were approved for borrowers outside of ITT Tech, Corinthian College, and American Career Institute. It resulted in student debt cancellation for borrowers who were ripped off by for-profit colleges, including Westwood College, Mariello School of Beauty, the Court Reporting Institute, and DeVry University. Furthermore, student debt was canceled for some borrowers with disabilities to the tune of almost $7 billion for more than 363,000 people. And the Education Department started a review of student loan forgiveness programs in total. So on May 24th, the Education Department announced the beginning of the process for issuing new higher education regulations, mainly concerning student debt forgiveness programs. The main topic the department plans to address concerns the methods for forgiving debt for defrauded borrowers and borrowers with disability, along with looking into the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which has rejected 98% of eligible borrowers. So for people that may not know, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was a program used to entice people that went to school, that went to college, to work and do necessary government jobs that usually pay lower because states have budgets they have to adhere to and they can't compete with the private sector as well as some other institutions. And this was done as a way to be like, hey, you borrowed money for the federal government. You're doing a very much needed job for states. You're helping people out with these jobs, social workers, teachers, firefighters, police officers, military, other civil servants. We need these jobs. We can't pay you as much because of regulatory or because of government pay, whatever. But we're going to at least forgive your student loans. If you make consecutive payments, minimum payments for, I believe it's 120 consecutive payments. And despite this, despite the fact that millions and millions of people have been dutifully paying on their loans, 98% of the borrowers that applied for the program were denied. And the primary reason for this is, of course, the way the free market intersects with government. So there's companies like Navient who are a loan servicer. The government says we'll outsource the loan service providers, the people that are supposed to help borrowers navigate the student loan process. We'll outsource that. We won't hire more people to do that. We'll find a place that can do it cheaper than the government can and hope that they actually do what they're supposed to do. And of course, they didn't, because they were not incentivized to. The way that these government contracts work, lowest bidder, and you have to pay for the services that people are receiving. So each person that is under a loan has a loan servicer, each person represents dollars that the company gets. If the company actually is like, hey, you know, like in 5 years, you can kiss all this debt goodbye, that means in 5 years they get less money. Tell me that isn't a little fucked. There is this program designed to increase the number of civil servants in the country, to attract top talent into civil service. And you're letting a private organization say, I want to make more money. Let's keep them on the rolls. Let's not tell them about these programs. Well, Biden has done what he can to address this. So according to Forbes, the process to implement new rules could be lengthy, though. After a hearing in June, there will be negotiated rulemaking, during which stakeholders meet with the department to review proposed legislation or regulations, and it could take a year or longer until changes are implemented. But the changes are necessary, and with this fix, which some of it's been fixed already, would be a godsend to millions of people who have been making payments consistently on time. We're talking a ton of teachers. Seeing that debt burden just go poof. Because the program that exists, that most people agree with, 70-80% of people agree with, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, most people agree with this program, will finally be off their backs. But we still have more to continue on with this. So the Biden administration has also retroactively waived interest on student loans for service members. So this relief happened automatically after removal of the requirement for service members, people of the military, to make individual requests to access the benefit. So instead of having people fill out paperwork, Biden's like, you're a service member, you have a student loan debt, no more interest. So this change will make service members 8 times more likely to receive the benefit than in 2019, because that's how few people either knew about the program or took advantage of it. And every service member should have taken advantage of this. Like, you know what? Honestly, I didn't know about this when I was in the military, so I probably made some extra payments that I didn't need to. And also, Biden has overhauled a student loan forgiveness program for public servants. So the Education Department launched a major overhaul of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, as we stated earlier. Now, this program is supposed to wipe out the debt clean of public servants after 125 qualifying payments. That is 10 years worth of payments. And as we stated earlier, 98% of applicants were rejected. So on November 11th, Cardano announced, this is last year, that a month after reforms were announced, 10,000 borrowers have already gotten $715 million in student debt wiped out, and 30,000 borrowers will get an additional $2 billion in relief in the coming weeks. And actions announced on April 19th wiped out student debt for 40,000 PLSF borrowers through revisions to the program tracking progress. This means that if a person is able to show that they've been making those payments over the last 10 years, then rather than it starting over, like you know how government can be sometimes, right? Thanks, William. So you know how government can be sometimes, right? There are a program doesn't start until they get the paperwork. Okay. So, and they get the correct paperwork filled out correctly. So if a lot of people that in the Navient example, there's a great podcast about us, so you can get it from there. Listen to me. I'm going to give you the long story short of it. So with the Navient program, they would often go back and forth like, oh, you didn't put the right date here, or we need this kind of check stub rather than this kind of check stub. You fax it to the wrong department. You got to refax it over here. The runaround, right? But once it all finally came in, and this could take months, a year, more to get the paperwork right, that's when the loans would start. The loan payments would start. The counting of those loan payments would start. What Biden has done is that he is retroactively granting those payment start dates for people that can prove that they've been making those payments. Either the government has the records of it or the individual borrowers do. And so if you were a teacher that had been paying your loans for the last, we'll say 9 years, 11 months, right? And you're like, oh, I've got all this paperwork. And you suddenly went to the government and went to your loan service provider, what have you, and you prove that, then next month, that last payment you make, boom, no more debt. And that's the way it should be. Shouldn't require all this paperwork to prove it. It's just, again, this is the intersection of private companies, of government programs outsourced to private companies, getting more money for that by denying the services and the benefits that actually are deserved. Thanks, William, for that. Yeah, I know this is like a lot of people actually don't know about this. I appreciate the compliment for the show. Yeah, a lot of people don't know about this, and yeah, I think if you are a teacher, you know one, if you know a social worker, what have you, anybody that works as a civil servant should let them know about this. Just let them know, and hopefully that will help out these borrowers that honestly deserve to have their debt wiped out. Now, there's still more, though, that Biden has done. So Biden has instituted a policy that gave nearly 8 million student loan borrowers behind on payments a fresh start. So through August 31st, the Education Department will work to give borrowers who were behind on their debt payments, either in default or delinquency, a fresh start and return them to good standing before they would have to resume payments. This would impact nearly 8 million borrowers who fall into those categories. And the measure also extends to borrowers who have privately held loans, not just federal. And lastly, millions of borrowers on income-driven repayment plans are now closer to relief. So on April 19th, the Department of Education announced steps to fix its income-driven repayment plans. So an income-driven repayment plan is saying you go to the government, you're working a job, whatever, right? And you're saying, hey, I don't make enough money to make the full payment of these loans. I still want to make the payments. I want to pay something. Help me out. And the government looks at your income, looks at what you make and the living expenses and stuff and such, and just like, okay, now this is just an example. Don't quote me on these numbers, but it says, okay, based on your finances, you can make 10% of the payment that you're supposed to make. So if they were having to make $500 payments, they make a $50 payment. And after 20 to 25 years of staying within those income-based repayments, they would have the loans forgiven because they made a dutiful effort to pay on their loans. Again, this was another program that had just been not abused, but had been basically ignored by the government. The government created this program, Congress created this program to help those people that for whatever reason just couldn't catch a break and make a bunch of money with their college education. And this is another instance, again, of service loan providers not telling them what they qualify for. So with this fix, would provide relief for borrowers who were previously blocked from forgiveness due to failure of payment tracking. What that means, payment tracking means that the loan service provider or the federal government or both were not properly tracking the payments being made by these people, and they will now go through, track these payments, and people that have been making dutiful payments for 20 to 25 years based on their contract will have their debts wiped out. So Cardona had said, quote, student loans were never meant to be a life sentence, but it certainly felt that way for borrowers locked out of debt relief they're eligible for. So the new actions include a one-time revision to count any past payments toward loan forgiveness program, along with issuing new guidance to student loan companies on modernizing ways to track payments accurately. Honestly, you have all these people all service providers, all this, you have to have a check, money order, debit card, like something automatic. Basically, all these things are done automatically for the most part. Or if they're not done automatically, they have to have a check, right? Or a debit card, money order, something that has a number associated with it and a month or a date. And it has to be registered in the system to track that the payment's been made. It should be automatic. This should be a SQL pool, for fuck's sake. And yet they're not doing it. Why? Because they lose money. They lose money for not doing the job correctly. Honestly, this should be one of those situations where the federal government pays a loan service provider more for getting more people off the rolls. Maybe these loan service provider companies shouldn't be traded on the stock market. Maybe they shouldn't be driven by shareholder value. Maybe they should be driven by stakeholder value. I don't know. That's just me. So while people can complain that Biden hasn't done enough, which is a fair criticism, especially if you're one to believe that student loans shouldn't exist in the first place for moral reasons, you can't say he hasn't done anything. And he's done quite a lot to help millions of people already. And millions more people will be helped out as these programs get fixed in the next few months. So I think that we needed to talk about this specifically because there's been talk of Biden, forgiving up to $10,000 in blanket loan forgiveness of up to $10,000 in the coming days. It's been like the coming days for like 2 weeks, right? And a lot of progressives and leftists say he's not doing enough, he's not doing enough, he's not doing anything, he's not doing enough, what have you. And a lot of them don't know about any of this. And a lot of people on the right side of the political spectrum, on the right wing of the political spectrum, right? On the right wing of the political spectrum, are likely to agree with a lot of these forgiveness programs. The debt-based one has an air of fairness to it. It's like, hey, sometimes people are unlucky and we should show compassion for those people. And they've made payments consistently, dutifully for the last 20, 25 years. A lot of people on the right will say, yeah, I'm okay with that. A lot of people on the right will definitely say, yes, those that work for the government, especially military members, should get their loans forgiven. And they'll be shocked that all these programs that they thought existed and were being managed properly were not, especially under Trump. Your mother or grandmother that's a teacher, still has debt, was denied by DeVos of getting her loans forgiven by the federal government, even though that is partly one of the reasons they probably became a teacher, or at least a public school teacher. Social workers, child protective services, police officers. These are all people that do work, necessary, long hour, grueling work, heartbreaking work a lot of times. Shouldn't they get the debt relief that they've been promised? I think so. And I know a lot of people, a lot of Republicans and independents would agree. So that's why we wanted to talk about it. But let us continue on now. So we're now seeing coming out of US and Taiwan a new trade initiative. So the United States will launch a new trade talks with Taiwan, US officials announced yesterday. Washington and Taipei will move quickly to develop a roadmap for the planned US-Taiwan initiative on the 21st century trade in the coming weeks. The launch of the initiative will run parallel towards Taiwan's continuous efforts in joining the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. The framework that is the new TTP. So the initiative aims to reach an agreement with high standard commitments that create inclusive and durable prosperity on issues that include customs facilitation, fighting corruption, common standards on digital trade, labor rights, high environmental standards, and efforts to curb state-owned enterprises and non-market practices. Boilerplate neoliberal stuff with some, hey, let's put in some environment stuff here. Let's get some digital trade stuff so people don't steal intellectual property. Put it all together and have a new trade deal. Now, the deal won't require congressional approval, officials said, because there are no market access requirements included. Still, one official wanted to underscore that we will be engaging pretty substantially with Congress and other stakeholders. Now, why is this important? The reason that this is important is because there has been rumblings of China trying to do to Taiwan what has happened in Hong Kong. China still views Taiwan as a rightful part of its country. Historically, it has been, but with the end, I guess we can say, of the Chinese Civil War, the the right-wing faction of the Chinese Civil War, fled to Taipei and was able to establish itself in an independent government, and has been as such for over, was it 70 years? It was, let's see, it was just after World War II. So yeah, about 70 years of a de facto independent country. So what does that mean? Well, that means that it has developed into a separate culture, a separate political body or entity, with separate customs, different ways of looking at the world from China. And the United States has done what it can without outright sending military forces to ensure that Taiwan, is included in the global economy as a separate entity. And one of those things that it has done to facilitate this is help build its economy around strategic, necessary goods and services that the United States and the world consumes. That includes chip manufacturing. Taiwan provides, is it 30%? Hold on. Taiwan provide percentage of chips. Yeah, there we go. Yes, 90%. So I was going to say over 50%. So 75% of the production takes place in East Asia, and 90% of the most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. So these are the kind of computer chips that go into supercomputers, weapon systems, your iPhone, iPad, Android devices, your car, etc. They are the chip manufacturing king of the world. And if China takes Taiwan over, that gives them a back door into nearly every single computer system on the planet. So strategically speaking, the US cannot allow this to happen. And I don't think anybody would want this to happen. People got extremely and rightfully upset when they found that the United States government was peeping in on pretty much, or having the ability to peep in, I should say, on every single communication in the world that went over the internet. This would be that times like 5 million. This would give China an access to your private information that has never been posted online. This is the same concerns that people had with China buying and controlling TikTok, with its ability to track and monitor communications through its applications. There's also been concern about this with Tencent. So, and it's not without cause. We on the program reported, I want to say it was 2 years ago at this point, but that there was a major hack on computer chips already that came out of, I think it was SolarWinds chip hack. China chip hack. I think it was SolarWind. Yeah. So yeah, there was a bug that happened in SolarWinds, which is this what was SolarWinds? Hold on. Software flaw exploited Chinese groups. So I think it was a firewall system. SolarWinds. Yep. So network and system management software. So firewalls, network administration, etc. Pretty much in every single government system across the world, because it was the leader of security. They found a bug in it. They found a bug in the system, exploited that bug, and got access to millions of pieces of data. And so the concern about China using chips in a similar way is not unfounded. There have been already some chips that came out of Chinese factories with, let's see, do I have a good, oops, I don't have a good size pencil here, but I can do it with a pen. So see this, right? Little ballpoint pen. That little point right there. A little processor about that size was able to hijack communications done on a processor in computers. So, do you want any foreign country, or any country for that matter, to be able to have access to this data? To have access to your private communications on your own computer? No. So strategically speaking, the US integrating Taiwan further into its, we'll just say it, anti-China trade policy is a good thing and necessary. Yes, 10 flicks. True. They do. China wants your dick pics, and you should be flattered. Not only should you be flattered, but you should also, maybe that Harlequin romance novel you've been working on will finally get a reader. I don't know if you're actually writing one. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, I think that a lot of people, especially on the left, are like, I'm not worried about China. I think you should worry about China, at least in this regard, because it's already happened and it's bound to happen again. America can be the quote unquote big bad in your eyes all you want but you shouldn't just be like, well, because America does it, China can. All right. Not only that, China is an authoritarian country. Taiwan is nominally democratic, or at least has been for the last 20 years or so. And shouldn't you want to see a democratic country remain democratic? Because if China takes it over, it will become state capitalist and authoritarian, just like Hong Kong is becoming. So yeah, I can't really take it too seriously when people when people say these things. Now, moving on though, Congress currently is on holiday break. Okay. So we are actually expecting to see legislation in the House around gun laws and the failure of those laws to pass in the Senate, as well as a possible movement on the China competition bill and a few others. So once they are back in session, we will have that news to deliver to you. Now, if you want to have us cover something, if you find something interesting you want our opinions on, or have a little bit of additional information on, hey, there's numerous ways to reach out to us. First, you can hit us up on Twitter at crowdsourced poll, and you can, where I like to post memes and a lot of other different stuff, and you can get a hold of me that way to share any kind of news article that you might see or any content you might want to have viewed in a viewing session and commented on. So go ahead and you can do that. You can also hit me up on Discord, links above and below. With that, too, if you want to get their stuff there. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy legislation in the pipeline. And you can also hit us up on Facebook. We do have a Facebook group and a Facebook page. The Facebook page is called the Tribune, Crowdsourced Tribune, and the Facebook group is called the Tribune Commons, because this organization actually is a registered not-for-profit in the state of Texas. We are going under a brand rename, and honestly, we know what the name is. The reason it hasn't happened yet is because I haven't found somebody to replace this badass fucking picture yet. Okay. This was done by one of our original members who has since moved on. They are now doing bigger and better things and having a better job, and they're no longer able to help with this kind of program. So once we find an artist to replace this image, and if you know somebody, hey, let me know. Okay. But we are going to replace it. And once that's replaced, we will have a fully official rebrand. Still going to be crowdsourced-ish, but that's not going to be in the name anymore. We're going to be a more of a news organization with politics and culture and commentary and stuff like that. The same kind of stuff you're having now, but under a name that actually denotes that to a degree. So be on the lookout for that. But let's continue on now. We have to continue on. We've already been streaming for about an hour, and there's still so much to cover. It's like stuff's always happening, and it's like you're sucking water out of a fire hose, but you gotta get that nourishment. And in order to get the nourishment, we have to continue. So let's continue. So we have some updates coming out of the Supreme Court, and the first one is coming out of Texas. So people that may not know, Texas has actually or tried to pass a law that would limit what social media companies can or cannot ban. We talked about this during our segment a few weeks ago on the Buffalo shooter segment. That video is up on YouTube. You can check it out. It's a good video. One of our most highly viewed videos, honestly. You can check that out. We'll include the link to it here shortly. But we talked about it a little bit, and it seems like the Supreme Court kind of actually ruled the way we expected them to. I'll be dropping that link here in the chat now. First for the video. Do that. All right, so here's the video. Here's the link to that video. Be able to get it. All right. And so let's talk about it, right? So the Supreme Court of the United States didn't hand down any decision from their regular docket this week. However, the shadow docket generated some activity. Now, for those that may not know, the shadow docket is the Supreme Court giving a ruling without its general hearings of lawyers and the like in person. They deliberate among themselves and they issue an opinion. Not everybody, the opinion is issued by an author, but it doesn't have who signed it, etc. Not all the time anyways. So we'll start. So that's what the shadow docket is. It's kind of weird. I don't know if I like the existence of the shadow docket, but at the same time, I don't think it really changes anything anything of substance with rulings. I think a lot of the decision making for a case happens based on that case's particular submitted briefs anyways, and the lawyers' arguments don't have that much of an impact. I think it's the deliberation between the justices themselves, going back to stare decisis. Sometimes, you know how well that goes, and the like. And so I'm not 100% against it, but at the same time, it does give skeezy vibes. It's like, it's a little cringe. So I get why people are against it, and maybe they shouldn't have a shadow docket, but it's not for me personally, it's not as cut and dry as other things that the Supreme Court does that is bad, or the other things that's around the Supreme Court that I think are bad. Talk about it a lot. Don't need to get into it again, but that's what I'll say about that. So we'll start with the shadow docket with a decision in a Texas law we talked about in the last few weeks. So the court handed down an order on Tuesday in the case titled Net Choice versus Paxton. The action blocked a Texas law that, according to many constitutional and media pundits, violates nearly every First Amendment rule on the book. And that is true. 100% factual. There should be no debate about this. The fact that this case didn't have a 9-0 ruling is the actual peculiar thing about this case. So the measure affects social media companies with more than 50 million active users in the US each month, like Twitter, YouTube, and Meta, only going after the big boys. We gotta protect our mom and pop social media companies, man. Right? No, they just wanted to go after people that they felt was silencing conservatives. So this law prohibited these companies from engaging in content moderation by declaring that they may not, quote, censor users post on the basis of, quote unquote, viewpoints. If a platform does remove any content, it must notify the user and let them appeal the decision. So the latter, the fact that a company had to notify a user, I think that's probably a good regulation to have. I think the way that Twitter did its content moderations with its very public reasons of banning like Trump and other high figured or high viewed publications, any people or what have you. I think transparency is a good thing, and I think that social media companies should tell you the exact reason of why you're banned. It shouldn't be such and such comment went against community standards. It should be like, this comment went against community standards, and this is the reason why the community standards were violated, and you shouldn't do that, and that's why you're banned, because you've violated this rule like 5 times, what have you. It should be very explicit. And with Facebook specifically, they will take down a comment and say, this comment goes against community standards, and we're not going to show you what that comment was. That's how, like, they think it's that bad of a comment. And I'm just like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, I'm a admin of a group. Clearly, I admin the group that's associated with this podcast. And I'm scratching my head. I'm like, how am I supposed to rectify anything? I'm just supposed to take your word for it when you fucked up so many times with your own community standards? When you didn't detect sarcasm or the fact that they weren't really telling X people to go kill themselves or what have you, whatever the case may be. I'm supposed to take your word for it. I can't even see what the comment was. I can't moderate based on this. I can't kick this person out. This is ridiculous. So I think that is good. But the former one, the one that says can't censor people based on viewpoints, is very ephemeral. It doesn't mean anything, right? It means that is, viewpoint is in the eyes of the beholder. And a lot of this surrounds cultural viewpoints, especially with trans people, where conservatives think saying that a trans woman is a man shouldn't violate any community standards, despite the fact that the reason it's given is very clear, and a private company, a private individual, can have the freedom to choose who and who not to associate with. That is why the Supreme Court ruled the way it did. We're going to continue on with the copy and get into some more of the legal reasonings. So, continuing on. These users can sue the company for imposing quote-unquote viewpoint discrimination, as can the Texas Attorney General. It also bars platforms from placing warning labels on users' posts to inform viewers that they contain objectionable content, such as graphic violence or nudity. In other words, the internet's not a safe space. If we're going to show gore, we're going to show gore, right? Which is kind of ridiculous in and of itself. Like, it's... Ugh. Anyways, continuing on. Now, it imposes these sweeping disclosure requirements, including a biannual transparency report to the state that details every single action taken against content. And it forbids email service providers from filtering spam, allowing users to collect $25,000 every day that their provider blocks, quote, the transmission of unsolicited or commercial electronic mailing messages. All right. Which spam provider in Texas gave the Texas state legislature, Ken Paxton, Governor Abbott, a fuck ton of money to get that one through? I'm curious about that. A lot of weird businesses exist in Texas. It's partly cultural. It's partly the business environment that Texas operates in. Texas is actually a pretty good place to start a business. When it comes to rules and regulations, it's very easy. Establishing the nonprofit cost us like $50, or it might have been a little more than that. It wasn't terribly expensive, is my point. And the requirements for it were very straightforward, very clear, didn't require a lot of paperwork. We're not tax exempt. That requires a whole other host of paperwork, right? But we are a nonprofit in Texas. So that's a good thing. I think business formation should be fairly simple. And part of the reason why Texas does well in business is because of that. But they also don't have very much in terms of regulations, which is where I'm assuming this comes into play, and I'm pretty sure someone got a kickback. Tell me if I'm wrong, though. Now, it's obvious on its face that many of these rules would be impossible to comply with. There should be no question about that. Like, you can't have a functioning social media platform without any content moderation. Like, I'm pretty sure that even the Republicans that wrote these rules would not want, terroristic messages being sent over Facebook. But that's just a viewpoint view as well, right? Be real. Continuing on, though. Platforms of the size targeted by the legislation have developed algorithms that remove billions of posts a year. It is unlikely they could review and resolve the appeals mandated by this law, even if they hired millions more employees. Again, also true. But I think some of these requirements actually would be a good thing overall. Now, other rules make these platforms unusable. Companies could not legally remove terrorist propaganda, as stated, foreign government disinformation, neo-Nazi recruitment videos, and other repulsive content. It would also likely prevent siloing kids away from adults from that as well. So yeah, lots of skeezy things. So it's an open question, though, whether under HB 20, Facebook could have legally removed the live stream video of the recent white supremacist mass shooting in Buffalo. Stare Decisis has held that the corporations hold the exact same First Amendment rights as people, and that those rights include editorial discretion over speech they disseminate. A federal judge halted HB 20 before it took effect, citing historical SCOTUS precedents, finding it an egregious violation of the rights of social media companies of free expression and free association. The decision to block the law was split 5-4 though. This puts the law on hold while a lawsuit plays out in lower court. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett voted to grant the emergency request from 2 technological industry groups that challenged the law in federal court. The majority provided no explanation for its decision, as is common in emergency matters, on the court's shadow docket. Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Elena Kagan, and Neil Gorsuch would have allowed the law to remain in effect. In dissent, Alito said that, quote, social media platforms have transformed the way people communicate with each other and obtain news. It is not clear how the high court's past First Amendment cases, many of which predates the internet age, apply to Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other digital platforms, Alito wrote. The order from SCOTUS follows a ruling last week by the 11th Circuit U.S. Court of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals that found a similar Florida law likely violates the First Amendment free speech protection. This law, and the one in Florida that mimicked it, are part of the culture wars that make up the platform today of the Republican Party. Now, I do find it interesting that Alito says that the laws regarding the First Amendment and the court's precedent around the First Amendment predate the internet age, and yet shall not be infringed is still the carrion call of 2A absolutist everywhere. And he's one of them. I find that to be a little funny and a little peculiar. Maybe it's not so much a judicial philosophy, so much as that they believe that this is targeting right-wingers. I don't know. No, I do know. That's what it is. Full stop. It's not hypocrisy per se. And again, no one gives a shit about hypocrisy. What I mean by that is not enough people compare about hypocrisy to make it a thing that changes people's opinions. Okay? That's what I mean by that. There's some people out there that really, really hate hypocrisy. But there's not enough of them to make any substantive changes when it comes to these things, right? But it is interesting that Elena Kagan was part of the dissenting opinion on this. Now, what this means, though, is that the court didn't actually rule on a thing. It just put an injunction and let the lower court's ruling stay while it goes through the appeals process. That's probably a good thing, because the way that the courts work in general in the United States is that the arguments are refined and more information is deduced from the logical arguments being made in front of a judge or a jury by lawyers to get to the heart of a matter and some sort of not justice, some sort of decision. We'll say a decision. And that's the process. It goes from the bottom up, so from the lowest part of the courts all the way up to the Supreme Court, and that does serve as a good filter to hear out arguments made over time. So we can't know how this case itself, once it gets to the Supreme Court, because it likely will get to the Supreme Court, how the Supreme Court itself is going to rule without knowing those arguments that are being made, the briefs being submitted in support or against the ruling or the rulings, depending on if there's a if the lower courts rule differently, one court rules differently than the other in the appeals process. And so it's a good thing that it's going through the court process. And it's also a good thing, in my opinion, that it is being temporarily blocked, because I am for free association. And what that means is that if a person has their private message board, or if a company, even the size of Twitter and Facebook, determine that they don't want to associate with a particular person or group of people, they should have the right to not associate with that group of people. Within reason, of course. I have to give the caveat, because people are like, well, that allows racism. No, we're talking about viewpoints here, not people's, not what a person is, but what makes a person, but the views that that person holds. Viewpoint discrimination is the reason why we have free association. It is the reason why we have the First Amendment. We're able to voice our opinions and duress and petition the government based on our worldviews in order to reach decisions. And if you're not allowed to do that, if you're not allowed to freely associate with people, if you're being forced to associate with people that you vehemently disagree with, then there really isn't isn't even freedom of speech. There isn't freedom of anything. You're being forced to deal with people that you don't want to deal with, and that's not a good idea. Again, though, with the caveat, you can't do it based on somebody's race, religion, nationality, sex, gender, etc. Those immutable characteristics, and because of the U.S. history includes religion as well, those immutable characteristics, you discriminate against those, that's not a discrimination of viewpoints. That's just you being an asshole. You being racist or sexist or what have you. And that's not good for a functioning society. But viewpoint discrimination is. In fact, it is necessary. And it is one of those things that the market can actually work itself out with. YouTube, people have left YouTube due to its censoring and shadow banning of quote unquote conservatives. And they've developed their own parallel platforms. We got Odyssey, we got, what's the other? BitChute, Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, etc. And Rumble is actually not bad as a platform. I don't support the people that run it, but as a platform itself, it's not bad. It's not like Gab, which is just full of fucking Nazis. Rumble's full of, like, for lack of a better term, anybody that's anti-establishment for the most part. You got Glenn Greenwald on there. You have, I think, some videos by Manning on there. There's some lefties on there. It's mostly right-wing dominated, but it's not right-wing dominated like Gab is. Okay, so there is that. So yeah, I think this is a good ruling, and I am curious to see how this full Supreme Court, in a full hearing, rules on this particular decision. Now, there is another Supreme Court decision, and I've pontificated a lot today, so we might not get through the whole copy, and I apologize for that, Nikki. You did a lot of good work on this. But there's another Supreme Court decision about climate change that comes up, and it's against red states. So, according to the Houston Chronicle reported last week, on a SCOTUS ruling that the Biden administration could continue to add a, quote, social cost of carbon calculation in regulating polluting industries. A group of 10 Republican states, including Texas, petitioned the Supreme Court to restrain the Biden administration from using the metric while their legal challenge was moving through the court system. The court denied the request in a one-line order, but did not rule on the legality of the metric itself. A social cost of carbon calculation takes into account the impact of emissions on society, from increased deaths caused by heat waves to coastline loss to rising seas. When Biden came into office, he instructed federal agencies to consider the cost of carbon emissions at $51 per ton, far higher than had been set under the Trump administration, impacting everything from federal pollution standards to oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters. Quote, Republican states have challenged that decision as a power grab to manipulate Americans' entire federal regulatory apparatus. And in February, a federal judge in Louisiana ruled that the social cost of carbon calculation violated federal law, preventing the Biden administration from using it. but the decision was put on hold by a federal appellate court in March, a decision that was confirmed by the Supreme Court today. The back and forth over whether federal agencies should consider the impact of greenhouse gas emissions has thrown the federal government into turmoil. Now, the reason that this is important is because if you're trying to tackle climate change, right? If you're trying to actually account for the negative externalities of businesses that contribute to climate change, you're going to have to give it a dollar amount. And with that dollar amount being set certain ways, you either reduce the actual impact, quote unquote, or you increase it. And the reason I put that in quotes is because the impact is what the impact is. But in reality, in the way that people will experience that impact is, 50, 60 years from now, right? For most people aren't going to notice like, oh, it's a hotter day. Yeah, it's kind of hotter today, but climate always changes, right? Like that's how people are going to say, right? But 60, 100 years from now, well, hey, we lost California to the ocean, right? Hawaii, bye-bye. Like, and if you want to prevent those things, you want to prevent sea level rise, then you have to account for these things in your calculations for regulations. And that's why Trump set it so low and Biden has raised it so high. And more than likely, the reason the Supreme Court, similar to the one that we talked about just previously, ruled in the way that it did for this to allow it to go through the courts is to hear these arguments, to give it a full hearing. And that's a good thing. And we should commend that when it happens. Even if we don't like how the court is stacked currently, even when we like the fact that the court is a political institution, regardless of what people may say, when things go right, you should commend it. And that's what we're doing here. But that's what we're going to say about the Supreme Court updates. Now, we got another little fun thing for y'all about coming out of states. All right. And that fun thing coming out of a group called Liberty Alliance. And with that name of Liberty Alliance, I'm sure you can all figure out kind of what's going on, right? So let's talk about this. All right. We have what is being called a woke heat map. And it's from Missouri. Seriously, this is a real thing. All right, let's get into it. So the group Liberty Alliance USA is located in Missouri. And here is some background about that group. The group brands itself as an organization, quote, committed to fighting back against the woke agenda that is permeating all across Missouri. Liberty Alliance is registered as a social welfare organization and is not considered a political organization. What is a social welfare organization? A political organization by another name. Okay. But taxes and legal speaking, it just means that they don't taxes and legally speaking, it means that they don't necessarily support any particular candidate. They support a particular social cause, and their social cause is to get them wokies. All right. Exposing truth to the real Americans in the kind of fashion that we have come to expect from groups such as this. So this week, the group unveiled its new woke heat map of Missouri, dotted with hotspots where it says the woke agenda is permeating all across the state. The map on its website features 12 pinned areas in Missouri that the organization has highlighted, all of which contains links to happening in schools, school districts, and the state. Coming out of the webs, according to the Liberty Alliance, they say, quote, the first step in fighting back is uncovering their crazy ideas, from critical race theory to grooming. Of course, grooming. Jesus fucking Christ. It's not grooming. Okay? Grooming has a particular meaning. Stop. You're diminishing actual grooming here. I hate this shit, man. Oh, thanks for the follow, bossy. Appreciate it. But they said grooming kids with sexually explicit content in books. That is why we have officially launched the website Woke Heat Map, an interactive tool designed to expose the insane actions of the radical left. End quote. Now, the organization added the map will, quote, alert Missourians of craziness happening in their own communities. Spencer Boone, Liberty Alliance's executive director, said in an interview that the initiative would help to trace any, quote, crazy action by crazy leftists. And we're going to go in blind, okay? I have not read any of these links, okay? We're going to poke around this website and talk about it. I've viewed the website. I've not read any of the links. I just know how to navigate it. We're going to talk about it because it's funny, but also very upsetting. And it shows where the culture war is. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right. Let's go ahead and poke around the website, everybody. Look at that. Typical. You know what? Hey, the website actually is pretty well made. Congratulations. Donation at the top, like every good website should have. About Blue Lives Spotlight, because of course we have to talk about the boys in blue, never mind Uvalde and the fact that they're fucking cowards. Conservative champions, gotta highlight. So we're gonna poke around a little bit, right? So let's look at the conservative champions, see what this is. Meet the Liberty Alliance conservative champions. Oh, look, everybody that's added got a little profile and conservative courage, everybody. Look, you can join their mailing list. Championship. The Conservative Chronicles is a series that highlights individuals making an impact in our state of Missouri. Whether it's a community leader, a volunteer, or elected official, we want to share their story. And they have Attorney General Kristen Becky Harps, Secretary of State, Harry Almo. I don't know who any of these people are. I think I've seen this guy, Tony Lukemeyer. I think I've seen him before. But I have a little blurb about this, right? Yeah. Little blurb. Okay. So, boilerplate stuff, right? All right. But let's get into the woke heat spot. All right. Now, this is what we got. All right. Oh, we got like a high school. Oh, Green Valley, like a town. Another high school. Statewide. Oh my god, it's so scary. Oh shit. We're gonna get into it now, everybody. Another town. Oh no, look at all these. Oh, look at all these. Oh, St. Louis University. Oh, they're infecting the kids with their woke agenda, everybody. The university is going to the school districts and indoctrinating the children. Won't someone think of the children? But of course, some of these are in some of these liberal strongholds. Some of these are in places where you would expect the woke agenda to be at. But no conservative website tracking the wokest of the woke would be complete without a submission form from users, because by golly gee, it's so much easier to crowdsource everything these days. We can just take someone's word for it and put it on the map. No one will know. It is not going to be surprising to me if we see in the next few weeks, since this website kind of launched recently, or this part of the website anyways, launched recently, if we see somebody submit a fake woke agenda corrupting the minds of the youth with their gay agenda from popping up on here and being exposed that they don't care about facts, they just want people's opinions. So of course we have that here. We can also drop attachments, everybody. Drop your proof, your little video, your little picture, your image of a school textbook. Drop it here. Look, we got docs. Oh, nope, can't do videos. Never mind. PDF, JPEG, PNGs, DocX, DocMax, file size 30 megabytes. You can only do 5 files at a time. So only images. But let us now look statewide. Gotta start in the
3,
center.
2, 1, we're live. We're live. Happy Tuesday morning. Is it Tuesday? It is.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. It's a Prager fucking you video. I told you I came in this blind, okay? So I'm sure everybody that watches this program live, that catches it on YouTube or Twitch, knows about Prager University. The fact that this goes to a PragerU video more than likely means that it is funded, this group is funded by the same fuckwits that fund PragerU. Hell, PragerU might be the funders of this and using the money they get from the Wilkes brothers and other organizations to fund an anti-woke agenda to manufacture consent in the conservative mold, and using their own version of identity politics to do so. Yes, everybody, Charlie Kirk is an identitarian. He likes to play ID poll along with Prager. Yes, it is true. Because if you can't beat them, you gotta join them. You gotta join them in the fight. You gotta fight fire with fire, and by golly, if I'm getting burned, they're gonna get burned too. Now, I don't have so much a problem with that. I think diversity is a good thing, and it is good to see that conservatives are starting to open up the diversity a little bit better. More black people, some more Latinos, women, not just old white dudes with crotchety voices and the like, coming for your kids. No, they're getting the women in on the action too, and that is what this video is about. But we are not going to watch this video. At least not today, because I only got 20 minutes or so to cover the rest of this copy, and there's a lot to cover. So we're going to go ahead and skip this here and go back to the website itself. So what we're going to do here, like I said, going in blind, I had no idea that was going to go to a PragerU video, but it's what it does go to, and that in of itself is quite revealing. So let us go to, you know what? Let us go to the Rockwood School District. The woke agenda in the school boards. Daily Wire. Oh, look at that. This isn't user submission. It is crowdsourced from another similarly funded PragerU outfit. The people that fund PragerU fund the Daily Wire. It's almost like it's the same group. Shocking. Is it though? It's not. But it just goes to show you what kind of information is being curated for this website. I'm just going to click around. I'm not even going to read these articles. Let's click on another one. I want to see if there's any blog post that they themselves make in here at all, or if it's just one blog after another from the same people. Look at this. Look at this. From Christopher Rufo. Again, another person funded by the same people on PragerU and the Daily Wire. Come on. You can't make this more obvious. You can't want... I'm giving them too many tips, okay? And you know what? I honestly, at this point, it doesn't matter if they do this or not, because their people aren't going to realize that that's what's going on. And let's be real, most liberals aren't going to know it either. Lefties, maybe some lefties, but it's only the people like us, people that help me write this program, that write the copy, and you that are tuning into this, that can pick up on the manufacturing of consent that is this workplace agenda, or workplace agenda. It is with this conservative website that launched recently in the last week or so. Should we even bother clicking on another link? Like, is any of them going to go to anything that isn't just crowdsourced from right-wing websites? I mean, no, probably not. Okay. Well, oh, okay. So this one, we can talk about this one a little bit. So students at the University of Missouri, Kansas City launched a podcast called Angry White Men and How They Ruined the World. The podcast, which mocked God and demeaned Roman Catholicism, was hosted on the university's official website. By golly gee, everybody, we can have free speech, but if these woke scolds say anything, I'm gonna run to daddy government. Because that's what's happening here. Ain't no grievance party like a conservative grievance party, baby. I don't know who Ben Zizloft. Let's, you know what? Let's look him up. Let's just look him up. Who is this person? Contributor at the Daily Wire. Look at that. Oh, it's almost like it's the same group of people. Because it is. So they actually tried to give this some semblance of not the same group of people, but they failed because the internet lives forever, and we were able to quickly point this to a Daily Wire contributor. So yes, that is the kind of things that we're getting on this website, and make no mistake, websites like this are going to proliferate all over in the general election, coming up in the general election for the 2022 general election. Do not be surprised if you see these websites popping up in Virginia, popping up in Georgia, in other key battleground states between now, the 2022 congressional election, and the 2024 presidential general election. It will be odd, extremely odd, if they don't continue to pop up. So, but let's go ahead and we'll quickly go over this one article here and maybe talk about why they're mad. Some of this stuff, hey, you know what? I do tone police. Fuck it. I'm just going to say I tone police all the time because I think optics matter, and some of this shit just has to stop. Okay. But let's talk about why they're mad. So let's give this a quick reading, minute or so. So I'm going to go very quickly. We're going to skim, right? So already covered that. Wenger Brown Man had a ruined world, blah, blah, blah. George Washington, Mitch McConnell, Ronald Reagan, Andrew Jackson, other white men with their eyes covered with red X's. I mean, these people are all bad. So, okay. After student hosts Kiera and Angel introduced themselves according to their racial identities, they began discussing the legacy of Pope Benedict IV. Him being a Catholic pope, it is not what you think, asserted Angel, referring to Benedict IV's youth upon ascending to the papacy. Angel said that there were no children being diddled here because he was just a child himself. Nothing says Pope like committing war crimes, he added in reference to Benedict IV's legacy. Here compared Benedict IV to Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure Trump was a pretty religious dude. So maybe this is the inspiration, quipped Angel in response. Later, Angel added that nothing says Pope like a little bit of illegal stuff. I mean, God says it's okay, right? So these are hot snippets, very hot snippets of hot takes, some little spicy memes against some people of the Catholic, maybe of the Catholic faith. Say what you will, Pope Benedict IV. He did some war crimes. I mean, none of that was wrong, right? Rome ruler, papal states, first emperor till his death. The great commanded his noble birth, public generosity. Benedict was native of Rome. Manualist. But yeah, so that is what we're seeing here, and it just goes to show you, that this website is just farming shit from other conservative websites. Oh, look, we have a tweet. This is a gingerbread person and the latest example of insanity that is Missouri schools. What is this? My God. We launched the Students First initiative to empower parents and bring transparency back to Missouri schools. This was submitted by a Fox C6 parent. We'll keep exposing the extremism. The gingerbread person. Gender identity? Nothing. Gender expression? Nothing. Biological sex? Nothing. Romantically attracted to? Nothing. Sexually attracted to? Nothing. Because it's a fucking gingerbread person. But what is this? What is this showing? Well, this is showing that gender expression can take place in different ways and not necessarily binary. We can identify as like womanly or manly. We can have biological sex that may not be just the binary. Being attracted to not just male or female, but many different kinds of people. You know, reality. And of course, this person, Eric Schmidt, is posting that this is bad. And let's see what this person is. Is he another? Oh, he's a Senate candidate. Okay. At least he's not directly affiliated with the other sites that they've posted on. But that is the kind of stuff that you can expect to proliferate in the coming months. Make no mistake, it will happen. But I hope that segment was a bit fun for y'all, because it was a bit fun for me. And so we're going to continue on now with the news, though. So we got about 15 minutes. Let's get into some interesting little tidbits here, starting with Michael Avenatti, right? So Avenatti, people looked at him as being a potential presidential... Okay. Basic liberals looked at him as being potentially a presidential candidate because he was sticking it to Trump, and that's really all that mattered at the time, right? But he is a gigantic piece of shit. So let's talk about it a little bit. So the lawyer, Michael Avenatti, was sentenced on Thursday to 4 years in prison for stealing book proceeds from Stormy Daniels, the porn actor who catapulted him to fame as he represented her in courtrooms and cable news programs during her legal battles with then President Donald Trump. Avenatti was already in prison when he learned his fate in Manhattan federal court, where Judge Jesse M. Furman said the sentence will mean that Avenatti will spend another 2.5 years in prison on top of the 2.5 years he's already serving after another fraud conviction, because he's a giant piece of shit. He came off as one. I don't know why people are like, yeah, this is the guy. We need a fighter. We need somebody to like punch Trump in the fucking face. Like, no, pick better people. This guy was clearly a piece of shit. It was fun. It was a fun story. Learning that Stormy Daniels saw Trump's mushroom and it was funny. Small, funny. He didn't really do much. He didn't move, just kind of wiggled. It was entertaining. But entertaining does not make a presidential candidate. Or at least it shouldn't make a presidential candidate. Now, the judge said Avenatti's crimes against Daniels were made out of desperation when his law firm was struggling. He called Avenatti's behavior craven and egregious and blamed it on blind ambition. Hey, the ego got to his head, man. All the praises from basic liberals saying, go for it, run, be free, take out Trump, just made him too big for his britches. Unlike Trump. Now he said that he believed the sentence will send a message to lawyers that if they go astray, they will lose their profession and their liberty, which is hopefully true, because people getting in trouble, it's not the level of punishment that matters so much. I mean, it does to a degree, but not as much as getting caught and actually being punished. The fact that Avenatti is being punished despite the fact that he fought Trump really good is a good thing. Now, Avenatti, wearing a drab beige prison uniform, choked up several times as he delivered a lengthy statement before the sentence was announced, saying he had disappointed scores of people and failed in a cataclysmic way. True, and hopefully he's actually remorseful. Avenatti chuckled at the feet, hugged his lawyer, and then shuffled off out of the court. Daniels was not in the court. Her current attorney, Clark Brewster, spoke on her behalf, saying that it was truly shocking that Avenatti tried to portray himself as a champion of his client during his statement. His conviction for aggravated identity theft required a mandatory 2 years prison sentence. He was also convicted of wire fraud. He's already serving a 2.5-year sentence for trying to extort Nike. Avenatti was convicted in 2020 for threatening to ruin the shoemaker's reputation if it did not pay him up to $25 million. That is a little bit of update about Michael Avenatti, and I thought that was a fun little story to bring to y'all's attention. What else do we got in these little tidbit news bites? Well, we have, Trump threatening Pulitzer board. What is this one about? Well, here's another little story about another gigantic piece of shit trying to throw their elbows around. So former President Trump is calling on the Pulitzer Prize Board to revoke prizes awarded to New York Times and Washington Post in 2018 for their coverage of the Russia investigation. Trump has threatened legal action if they do not comply. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did they do this? Why is he doing this? Well, according to Trump, everything about Russia was a lie. That wasn't a very good impression, but I tried. So everything about the Russian investigation to him was a lie, and the right wing thinks it's a lie. And so if it was a lie, then they shouldn't get kudos from anybody about reporting on that lie. But was it a lie? No, it was not. The reporting was mostly accurate. There was some things that turned out to be not true, but that isn't necessarily the reporter's fault. Also, it was more right than wrong. People like to say that the entire Russian thing is a liberal conspiracy theory hoax, but we have the Mueller report, a 400, 500-page document. If you read it line by line, there's a lot of proof of what people are claiming. Now, did Russia substantially influence the 2016 presidential election? Probably not. Not substantially. It's not easy to measure what they did, and they did do a lot. And Trump's team, according to the Mueller report, did try, if not successful, at least tried to coordinate with Russia to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. I think they said that, I think in the report it said that Trump Jr. was actually too stupid to realize he was breaking the law and too stupid to capitalize on the fact that he was trying to break the law, so it didn't matter. But in most circumstances, being dumb isn't an excuse to avoid legal prosecution. And that was probably a hedged bet to make it not look political from the report's perspective, more than likely. Now let's continue on though. Now, in a letter to Pulitzer administrator Marjorie Miller, Trump noted that he twice previously made the request, stating that the reporting on the years-long probe was based on false information. There is no dispute that the Pulitzer board awarded to those media outlets was based on false and fabricated information that they published, the former president said, which we just refuted. This is not true. The continuing publication and recognition of the prizes on the board's website is a distortion of facts and a personal defamation that will result in the filing of litigation if the board cannot be persuaded to do the right thing on its own. This is a threat of a slap suit. For those that may not know, what is a slap suit? Well, a slap suit. Let me get the exact definition. So a slap suit stands for strategic lawsuit against public participation. In other words, threatening legal action against an individual, company, or otherwise group of people to get them to shut the fuck up. You can be like, hey, I got fuck you money. Trump's got a lot of fuck you money. And say, I got all this money, I'm willing to waste it to make you do what I want. So hopefully the Pulitzer board does not acquiesce and takes him to court, because if you have a defamation suit, you have to prove that the defamation happened. And that means more juicy details about all that sweet, sweet Russian interference. And the band goes marching on. So Fox, now let's continue though. So Fox News reached out to the Pulitzer board for comment, but they did not immediately respond. The former president directed the Pulitzer board to pay close attention to the Sussman trial, which was ongoing at that time. The trial ended in an acquittal yesterday. Yes, it's ended in acquittal, and we'll talk about that in a second. So Trump also asked the board to look at the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report, detailing problems with the FBI's actions in the early stages of the Russia probe before it was turned over to the special counsel Robert Mueller. Again, thank you, Armed with my opinions for the follow. Appreciate it. So Trump also asked the board to look at the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report, detailing problems with the FBI's actions in the early stages of the Russia probe before it was turned over to special counsel Robert Mueller. Quote, together with the publications that have obsessively promulgated disgustingly false attacks against me, you have all done you can to destroy my reputation, Trump said. How do I get my reputation back? Well, you probably don't. Okay, so let's we'll talk about the Durham case because we just talked about that. But first, we have a comment from a listener. So, what is Armed with My Opinion said? So, let's get it on the screen. I heard that the far left is rallying behind Amber Heard now. Reminds me of a quote from Sun Tzu: when your enemy is making a mistake, don't correct them. To be completely, utterly frank with you, Armed with My Opinion, I don't give a shit about that case. From all the facts that released and that I read, I did not watch the case. I did not watch any of Benny's opinions on the case. I read snippets here and there. It sounds like they're both giant pieces of shit and should not have been in that relationship at all. Yeah, that's all that matters from that. So I'm not going to comment on that further because I don't think it's very important. So yeah. But you're right, though. If the enemies are giving themselves enough rope to hang themselves with, let them do it. And yeah, I don't think that's what's happening with this case here. I think what you're seeing is some feminist commenting on the case and those getting published. And that's about it. And that's what you're saying. So yeah. But let's continue on with the news roundup. Talking about the Durham's case being a dud. So, as we just stated, Michael Sussman's, the case that Trump was talking about is the one against Michael Sussman, an attorney for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And he was acquitted Tuesday on felony charges of lying to the FBI about allegations against Donald Trump. This means he did not lie, according to the law. Quote, "Justice ultimately prevailed in my case," Sussman said outside the court, the Washington Post reported. "I'm looking forward to getting back to work I love." The acquittal was a loss for special counsel John Durham, a Trump administration appointed special counsel who produced an indictment against him just as the statute of limitation loomed. In other words, oh shit, I got to do something before it goes. Hail Mary. Hail Mary. And it failed. So the indictment said that Sussman lied to the FBI during a September 19, 2016 meeting about his ties to Clinton's presidential campaign when he alleged that Trump organization was communicating with criminal-linked Alpha Bank through a secret communication channel. On Tuesday, though, 12 jurors in D.C. federal court voted unanimously to find Sussman was not guilty of perjury. Quote, "While we are disappointed in the outcome, we respect the jury's decision and thank them for their service," Durham said in a statement to the Post. The case stemmed from Sussman, who is also a prominent cybersecurity lawyer, bringing suspicion from an odd internet data that the cybersecurity researchers found in 2016. The researchers said that the data might have reflected the secret communication channels between Trump and Alpha Bank, but the FBI looked at the suspicion and dismissed them. In other words, he didn't lie. He didn't say he didn't work for somebody. It was clear that he was a Clinton operative of some sort. The FBI did its due diligence, looked it up. The media reported all this, found that there was nothing actually suspicious. The media reported on all that as well. And life went on because that is what's supposed to happen. Now, is it curious why Trump is so pissed off about this? I have a feeling that I know what it is. And it is something that Republicans do very well a lot of the time. And it is called message shaping and narrative control. So message shaping and narrative control is basically the idea that you can influence what people do and do not believe by either putting out a lot of information out there and seeing what sticks, or by articulating your opinion or your evidence in such a way that makes people more apt to believe that something nefarious is happening. And Republicans do this all the time. And they do it to great effect. Partly because, culturally speaking, a lot of people are predisposed to believe that their government is out to get them in some way. Also, partly out of fear of others and things like that. But the primary way that this is accomplished is by getting out in front and going on the attack first. because people's first impressions are everything. It is very hard to shake a first impression off. Good or bad, once that impression is made, it sticks and is very hard to wash away. And if you have been in a bad relationship where it started off great, you probably have experienced this firsthand. Everybody knows that you have 6 months that you have to really work your ass off at a job to be able to slack off a little bit here and there and get away with it, because you've set an expectation that you're doing everything that you can at that job and putting forth the effort, and now you can relax a bit better. This isn't time theft that I'm saying about. This is more like, you know, you put your nose to the grindstone for like first 6 months, and then people have got the expectation that you do that and you get stuff done, and if you haven't gotten it done yet, then it may just take you a little longer, and they're giving you more slack because they know you're a diligent worker. This is all common knowledge, but it's not common knowledge that this can be done on a mass scale. And so I think the part of the reason why this is being touted as one of the things that conservatives should be so pissed off about is because it was a first salvo, and it tainted people's opinions of Trump and what was happening. And that's why they don't like it. The tool was used effectively against them, and they have to fight back against it, and that's how they're doing it. But everybody, we are about out of time. So for those that may not know who might be joining the program for the first time, we like to end our program with a little segment we like to call News of the Weird. And in this segment, we have 2 stories we're going to bring to you. First up is dog paddling. So this isn't so much weird as it is fun. And we're going to watch a little video about it. All right? We're going to watch a little video about it, but first let's talk about it. So dozens of dogs rode on paddle boards for their owners at the dog paddle surf race in Spain. The event Sunday in El Masnou, north of Barcelona, required dogs to remain on the paddleboard at all times while their owners paddled along the nearly 1-mile course. Dog Flow Sports, the group that organized the dog paddle surf race, said the event was a test of training as owners had to help their dogs resist the temptation to jump in the water. Organizers said the event was the first of what they hoped will become an annual race. Let's go ahead and watch a clip of that. Look at all those good boys. Oh, boys and girls. Oh my goodness. He's staying on the paddleboard, just chilling out. Oh, he's so happy. That's just cool. Oh, Oh, that one didn't make it. That one didn't make it. But we thought that that was an interesting, cool little story we wanted to share with you. And it was fun. I think it was fun. Now we have another story, and this one comes out of the great state of Florida, because Florida's got a lot of weird, fucked up shit that happens, and this is just one of those things. So, out of Florida, a family from Charlotte County, Florida, discovered a 10-foot long, over 550-pound alligator swimming inside their pool. Talk about scary. This thing can eat you. This thing can eat a whole grown man, 6'4". Can just chomp you. So the family woke up after hearing loud noises from their house, their house's landing area, as the gator tore through their screen to reach the cool water. And we have some pictures for you from Facebook of this giant ass alligator. So, okay, I can't zoom in more. I'm sorry. It's Facebook. This. Look how big it is. It's gigantic. Look, this cop here is smiling. It's like, oh shit. Look at that. A big chomper. But everybody, with that, I am sad to say we are out of time. Now, we know you liked what you heard because you stayed with us till the end, so go ahead and smash that like button, the follow button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. We like to thank you all for joining in on this great little program we like to do every Thursday. Again, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because without you, we would just be a few people shouting into the void that is the internet, and you make it more fun and entertaining to do so. So thank you for joining us. If you want to get into the community more, if you want to share your ideas with us, if you want specific programs to be covered on this show or any of our other shows, or you'd like to be a guest on any of them, call in, what have you, then go ahead and join us on Discord. Discord's where you can find us. It's really the place to be. And you can also hit us up on Twitter at Crowdsourced Poll. We also run a Facebook group called the Tribune Commons and a Facebook page called the Crowdsourced Tribune that is also associated with a writers guild where we're trying to get people published in the writers consortium sort of way, offering editing service, crowdsourced editing services, opinions, and that sort of thing. So we do a lot of different things here. So if you're watching us on Twitch, go ahead and stick around for just a moment as we will raid into one of our people, assuming it comes up on my Twitch, on my deck. Oops, I don't know what I just did. What did I just do on my deck? Oh, Twitch mentions, that's fine. So, oh, there's only one person live right now? No, that's not right. Okay. All right, we are going to raid. We're going to raid Stardust. Stardust does some meme content, some debates, some coverage of different drama, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and raid her because she does interesting content, and it's good to raid into people that don't do the same kind of content we do every once in a while. So with that, everybody, as we always say at Crowdsourced Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.